There's nothing wrong with me.
Beverly. Beverly. Where is Beverly?
Welcome to What's Beverly, a Halloween podcast. I'm Sophia.
And I'm Adrienne, and today we're exploring what Beverly Crusher is, because she's not human, folks.
Shout out to Todd from Computer Resume for giving us the amazing episode title idea.
And we're going to hear a little bit from Todd in a moment. But first, this is the first of our October Halloween specials that we're doing this autumn. And yeah, we're going to be releasing one episode every week for the month of October. So please stay tuned and check that out because we have some fun stuff planned. So yeah, we're really excited about that. Sophia, I have a question for you.
Okay.
What is the best Halloween costume you've ever had? And have you ever been trick-or-treating?
So we weren't like huge on Halloween in my family. We didn't go trick-or-treating for probably until I was like maybe 13. I remember like when I was young, my mom would like dress me up in a Halloween costume, take a picture of me, and then take it off, and we just never go trick-or-treating. And I don't think that I knew that trick-or-treating was part of Halloween for like a while. And then when I was old enough to be like, hey, like other people are getting candy, we'd go to the mall. There, I don't know if this is like a popular thing, but in my city, I think like the day before or a couple of days before Halloween, the local mall would like each store would hand out candy and like you go and do indoor trick-or-treating because like I grew up in like a place that's very cold in October, so like a lot of the times you wouldn't go, like it would be hard to go trick-or-treating outside. And I don't know if my parents' rationale was that like they just didn't want us outside at night in the cold and dark. Like I don't know, but we did like mall trick-or-treating for a little bit and we liked that. But yeah, I think one year, I don't know if I was a specific hockey player, but I dressed up as a Montreal Canadiens hockey player with my dad's jersey and like all of like his like hockey equipment and stuff like that, and that was really fun. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know. We didn't really do it very much either. And I think it's because it was like, I don't know, my mom went through this phase where she thought Halloween was like the devil or something. I don't know. So sometimes we were allowed to dress up as biblical characters and go to like fall festivals like at our church, which was always a little disappointing because there's only so many female biblical characters. You don't have a lot of options. You can kind of be like Mary or Bathsheba. So that wasn't fun. But I'm making up for it, you know, in my adult life. Last year, I had 2 Halloween costumes. I dressed as Sydney Prescott from Scream, complete with wig and fake blood everywhere. And then my husband and I went as Luke and Lorelai to a little Halloween party that we had. So we're making up for lost time.
So because this is a Halloween special episode, we've asked some of our wonderful Star Trek friends to compile their own thoughts via voice message or text, and we'll be sharing those throughout the episode to see what some of our Star Trek friends think Beverly Crusher is.
So we're going to start with our good friend Todd, and yeah, let's see what Todd has to say.
Incoming transmission.
Greetings, Where's Beverly listeners. I'm writer-comedian Mr. Todd A. Davis from the Computer Resume podcast, Cinema Shock, and Cosmic Crit. Right off the bat, I just want to thank Sophia and Adrienne for asking me to chime in on my thoughts about Blazin' Bev being non-Terran. These thoughts have been burning a green hole in my brain for quite some time now, so I submit this. My preview of my upcoming 16-part Ken Burns-esque podcast series titled What's Bev? I'm just kidding, I don't have time to produce another show. So, my theory is Commander Beverly Cheryl Howard Crusher MD is an Anabaj. So, what's an Anabaj? Thank you for asking. You can see one, the only one so far, in Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 2, Envoys, attempting to seduce Boimler. Mariner notes that they're attracted to weak-minded people and the color red. What color is Picard's uniform again? Now, as for the weak-minded, look no further than Geordi LaForge. Only thing he can seduce is a hologram. While she never skittered up walls or displayed the physical characteristics of the reptilian race, that's not to say that the pie-eating traveler wasn't hatched from Jack's throat. We do see her teaching everyone's favorite android how to dance in Next Gen Season 4, Episode 11, Data's Day. And that's disturbing enough.
His legs flail about as if independent from his body.
So those are my thoughts. I hope I've added another fun layer to this onion. You can find my shows at youtube.com/cosmiccrit, cinemashock.net, the Computer Resume podcast on all your podcatchers, social media, and Patreon at Computer Resume. And I'm at Mr. Todd A. Davis on all the socials. From all of us at the Computer Resume podcast, happy Halloween, and I'll see you in 10 Forward.
So I love everything about this. I think this was a work of art.
This is, like, I told Todd when he sent us this, that this is quite possibly the best thing that I've ever heard in my entire life, and I stand by that.
Yes. I've never even heard of an Anna Bosch. Have you?
No, I haven't watched Lower Decks yet. I know Todd is a big Lower Decks fan, and he has very good taste, so I'm going to have to start watching that. And I think this might be the catalyst to get me to watch Lower Decks, is because I want to know Beverly Crusher's true form.
Right? I think my favorite part about this was attracted to the color red. What color is Picard's uniform again?
Yes.
Like, I don't believe it for a minute that she's an Anna Bosch, but Todd, A+ for creativity.
I believe it.
I know you do, Sophia. I know you do. So I think this is the part of the episode where I'm going to launch into my very own treatise / TED Talk about what I think Beverly Crusher is. So I have some notes here. I basically have had this idea for quite some time. I knew that I had written down some of these thoughts, or a lot of these thoughts actually, several years ago when I was doing a rewatch of TNG. So I went back through all my old notebooks and I found one of my journals from 2019. And because I journaled about this guy that did it. And so a lot of this stuff is from, or the bones of it is from, something that I journaled on May 25th, 2019. And I really just sort of fleshed it out a little bit as we were preparing for this episode. Sophia, are you ready for this?
I was born ready.
I just want to apologize to you and all our listeners in advance for the TED Talkiness of this. I want to start off by saying that I firmly, vehemently believe that Dr. Beverly Crusher is a witch, and in every sense of the word. But I did want to start off with the question, what is a witch? I think that it's actually quite difficult, if not impossible, to define what a witch actually is. So many people identify with the word witch, whether in an archetypal sense or in an actual I practice magic sort of sense. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to actually pay homage to the words of someone else for this, because I cannot speak to this as well as they can. So I'm going to read a little excerpt from a Time article entitled "Yes, Witches Are Real, and I Know Because I Am One" by the author Pam Grossman. She says, "Witches have always walked among us, populating societies and storyscapes across the globe for thousands of years. From Circe to Hermione, from Morgan Le Fay to Marie Laveau, the witch has long existed in the tales we tell about women with strange powers that can harm or heal. And although people of all genders have been considered witches, it is a word that is most often associated with women. I'm fascinated by how one archetype can encompass so many different facets. The witch is a notorious shapeshifter, and she comes in many guises: a hag in a pointy hat, a scarlet-lipped seductress, a cross-dressing French revolutionary, a perfectly coiffed suburban housewife, a woman dancing in New York City's Central Park with her coven to mark the change of the seasons or a new lunar phase. The witch can sometimes have a green face, or she can wear scarves and leather and lace. She lives in Africa, on the island of Aia, in a tower, in a hut, in Peoria, Illinois. She lurks in the forest of fairy tales, in the gilded frames of paintings, in the plot lines of sitcoms and young adult novels, and between the bars of blues music. She is solitary. She comes in threes. She's a member of a coven. Sometimes she's a he. She is stunning. She is hideous. She is insidious. She is ubiquitous. She is our downfall. She is our deliverance. Our witches say as much about us as they do about anything else, for better and for worse. More than anything, though, the witch is a shining and shadowy symbol of female power and a force for subverting the status quo. No matter what form she takes, she remains an electric source of magical agitation that we can all plug into whenever we need a high voltage charge. She is also a vessel that contains our conflicting feelings about female power, our fear of it, our desire for it, and our hope that it can and will grow stronger despite the flames that are thrown at it. Whether the witch is depicted as villainous or valorous, she's always a figure of freedom, both its loss and its gain. She is perhaps the only female archetype who is an independent operator. Virgins, whores, daughters, mothers, wives. Each of these is defined by whom she is sleeping with or not. The care that she is giving, or that is given to her, or some sort of symbiotic debt that she must eventually pay. But the witch owes nothing. She has her power on her own terms. They have agency, they create, they praise, they commune with the spiritual realm freely and free of any mediator. They're metamorphs and they can make things happen. They are change agents whose primary purpose is to transform the world as it is into the world they would like it to be. This is why being called a witch and calling oneself a witch are two different experiences. In the first, it's often an act of degradation, an attack against a perceived threat, but the second, an act of reclamation, an expression of autonomy and pride. Both of these aspects of the archetype are important to keep in mind. They may seem like contradictions, but there is much to glean from their interplay. The witch is the ultimate feminist icon because she is a fully rounded symbol of female oppression and liberation. She shows us how to tap into our might and magic despite the many who may try to strip us of our power, and we need her now more than ever. So thank you so much, Pam Grossman. That was really good. You can find more from her in her book, Waking the Witch, Reflections on Women, Magic, and Power. And I really felt that that could sum up better than I could what sort of the definition of a witch is. And also the idea that it's really hard to define. And that's okay. That is sort of what I'm working with today when I'm talking about Beverly Crusher is a witch, but of course I'm going to heighten it because it's science fiction and because it's fun. So throughout the series, Beverly often plays or is shown as embodying archetypal or largely divinely feminine archetypal roles. Okay, the mother, the midwife, the healer, the priestess, the witch. And in all of these, we see patterns of behavior or what she does. She guides, she heals, she protects, she intercedes. But the midwife, to me, is where we can really sort of center in on who she is or what she is. This really gives us a lot. So when we think of what a midwife is or what they do, they assist in births and they assist in deaths. But what does this mean exactly? It's essentially assisting people from moving from one state into another state. Midwives could be thought of as people who stand sort of live in liminal spaces, that sort of the space in between that's neither here nor there. But she often reminds me as well in this sort of context as embodying sort of this like priestess archetype. And a priestess is ultimately like an intermediary who connects the individual to a higher power, right? And they are channeling, they are conduits for forces outside themselves. And to me, this is where we really get into what Beverly Crusher is. She is a midwife. She is connecting people. She's a channeler. She's a conduit for energies outside herself. So that's my thesis statement. I hope that makes sense. I would now like to bring your attention to Beverly Crusher's background. So we know that her maiden name is Howard. Howard is an English surname. Like a lot of names that are in the English language that hail from the British Isles, it's often very difficult, if not impossible, to truly track the origin of these names. I have this problem with my own maiden name. Maybe it's Scottish, maybe it's French, maybe it's Anglo-Saxon. Like nobody really knows for sure. And this is sort of what we're dealing with when we're dealing with the name Howard. However, in at least two different possible languages, Old High German being one of them, the name Howard means protector or chief guardian, which I think is very fitting for Dr. Beverly Crusher. Ooh, yes. Ooh. So that's her name. We know that she has her ethnic ancestry would ultimately be from the British Isles. And we know that the British Isles was, in ancient times particularly, an area of land that was highly influenced both by its indigenous people and also the Celtic culture. And that there's a lot of, within both of those realms, a lot of what we would think of today as like paganism or druidism or animism or witchiness, right? So there's a lot of nature worship, a lot of living in harmony with nature and reverence for those things, working with the energies, with the earth around you, instead of, maybe just like taking and consuming everything. This is not a podcast about what we do. But anyway, so she was also born on the moon, which I find fascinating because the moon it's mysterious, but it's also historically in many different cultures associated really strongly with femaleness, with femininity, with mystery, with psychic ability. And this isn't really hard to see. The moon cycles through its own cycles of about 29 and a half days. People who menstruate have a similar cycle. The menstruation cycle is also broken down into four segments that sort of mirror the seasons. And so you get this with the seasons and also with the moon. So there's sort of a mysteriousness about the moon and the fact that she was born on the moon. I'm not saying it means anything. Just kidding. That's exactly what I'm saying. It definitely means something. And then we have this idea that we find this out in the episode Sub Rosa, which we'll talk about briefly, but she comes from a matriarchal line, which is fascinating because in Western culture, we don't have matriarchal lines, but she comes from one. And so I find this to be really, really fascinating. And it's very, it's very witchy. I like it. And then also we know about her background that she and her grandmother survived some sort of disaster on Arvada 3. I don't know that we ever find out what that disaster was, but they survived it when almost no one else did. And I've always found this really interesting. Why is it that they survived and no one else did? Maybe it's because they're witches. That's definitely why. Any questions or comments so far?
Just that I'm living for this, and also if my women's studies class in university was anything like this, it would have been a whole lot better. Like, petition for this to be taught in universities, because this is incredible, and this is like PhD thesis level shit right here. I'm living for it.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you. I don't know about that, but it was a lot of fun to come up with. We've sort of talked a little bit about Beverly Crusher's background and how suspiciously witchy it is. And again, as I start to go through, what I'm going to do now is go through a couple of episodes or a handful of episodes that I think really speaks to what I'm trying to say. And as I'm talking about this, I want to kind of keep in mind that of Beverly Crusher as sort of like this intermediary, this person that like intercedes, someone who is often reflecting people back to themselves. She's often channeling other people's energy back to themselves, and also what I would call transmuting energy, which is where someone gives you something maybe negative and you sort of make it, by default of being you, something that is less negative or even positive. So in the pilot, Encountered Far Point, we are introduced to Beverly Crusher. And in this episode, she has a son. She's very much presented as an archetypal mother in this first episode. We don't really get a lot about her other than the fact that she's a mom. And some people may like to downplay this or, say, oh, this is like bad feminism, or whatever. And that's an argument for a different day. But this is what we are given canonically about her. She is a mother. And I think a lot of women are mothers, and I think it's great that she is one. I think it's good that we see that side of her, that archetype of her as a mother, as someone who takes care of other people. And we're going to see that throughout the series. And so I think that's a really interesting way to sort of set her up. Thankfully, Beverly Crusher is not only a mother, and in as early as the episode, our favorite episode, Sophia, Arsenal of Freedom, where they fall down that hole. And it's like the best scene ever. This episode, we really get Beverly Crusher, sort of fulfilling this role of the healer. And we know she's a doctor, but we get more than that in this episode. We find out that she has a really extensive knowledge about herbalism. And for Todd, herbalism is not just smoking marijuana, which is completely fine if that's something that you want to do. But herbalism is really like plant medicine, right? And this could be anything from actually smoking marijuana to engaging in the use of psychedelic mushrooms to heal trauma. It could be ayahuasca, but it could also be drinking a cup of chamomile tea because your stomach is upset. So herbalism is really anything that we use from the earth to assist our bodies in their natural healing processes. And she seems to have an extensive knowledge of this that she got from her grandmother. And this is, guys, this is as witchy and as ancient as it gets. Like, you don't just, herbalism is a very ancient wisdom or very ancient practice, ancient knowledge. And as far as I understand it historically, there are no indigenous cultures anywhere in the world, whether you're talking about the United States, North America, Australia, the British Isles, Central Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, South Africa. It doesn't matter where you're going. There are no indigenous cultures that don't have plant medicine. So this is as human and as ancient as it gets. They have found Neanderthal graves where people have chamomile and yarrow in their teeth. So we've been doing this since we've been people, which I find really fascinating. So that's super witchy because it's super old, right? Then we move into the high ground episode. This is the episode where Beverly Crusher ends up being kidnapped or held hostage by this sort of like terrorist organization. And I love this episode because she very much embodies the dark goddess archetype, which we often get with like, the idea of Persephone or Hecate or Lilith. Those are just the ones that I'm familiar with from like my own like historical and like ancestral knowledge. I'm sure there are more of them I'm just not aware of. But she literally in this episode, she's underground. So she literally descends into the underworld and really plays the part of someone who has to face this essentially like shadow world, right? Like this is not all Federation and Starfleet and Prime Directive. This is something outside of what we normally know, what the character of Beverly normally knows. And she has to engage with this, and she has to question all of her preconceived notions and ideas about who is good and who is right and who is wrong. And ultimately, you know, the episode sort of ends or starts to close on a scene where she's speaking to, he's like a teenager or a kid, I don't really remember. And she just says to him, you know, no more killing. And in this episode, she doesn't affect change through power, traditional means of power. She affects change by asking questions and by making suggestions and by her very presence there as a healer or as a dark goddess sort of archetype. So again, witchy Beverly Crusher. Y'all, she's super, super witchy. Then we get into the episode Transfigurations. And this is such hardcore for me. High priestess midwife archetypes. So this is the episode where she meets John Doe, who's the guy that doesn't know who he is. We don't know who he is. And they fall in love because Beverly's like doomed to fall in love with people that are about to move into a new state of existence. And this is the first time that we're aware of that this happens. John Doe ultimately like evolves. He becomes a whole new life form and then he leaves her. But I just find it so fascinating that this evolution seems to be accelerated and it seems to be able to complete itself after he comes into contact with her and spends time with her. And again, I don't view this as he's using her. I view this as she's fulfilling her archetypal role here as a midwife or as a priestess. She's an intermediary and she's assisting his evolution or his transformation, or the episode title, Adrienne, Transfigurations, his transfigurations. And then the classic Beverly Crusher is a witch episode or a Q or whatever it is you want to say, Remember Me. And I literally wrote down here, y'all, she creates an entire universe with her mind. Like, I don't really feel like I need to say a lot more.
You can't get witchier than that.
No. And she doesn't even know she's done it. That's the thing. And that's the thing I love about Beverly Crusher, right? And I'll talk about this a little bit later. I think she has no idea she's a witch. None whatsoever. Maybe later she starts to kind of figure it out. Maybe after Sub Rosa, we'll get there in a minute. But yeah, she creates a whole world with her mind, you guys. Like, I just don't know. And this is like hella creator energy, right? Mother Earth, sort of like, so again, it's like no matter what she does, she seems to be embodying these traditional divine feminine archetypes. And it's fascinating and you can't get witchier than that. And Cause and Effect, my favorite TNG episode of all time. Everything is wrong and she's the first one who notices. She is the first one who feels something is off before a lot of other people. And also a lot of the crew, by the way, never think that anything is off. They never have an awareness of it at all. But she's one of a few people who's hearing voices in a very intuitive sort of psychic sense and, alerts the rest of the crew to the fact that I think something is wrong. And one thing, just as a side note, that I love about this, that is also very witchy, is she trusts herself implicitly. She senses that something is wrong. She doesn't know how to prove it. She just knows, she feels something is wrong. And instead of saying, oh, well, I probably shouldn't trust my instincts. I probably shouldn't trust my feelings because this isn't like logical. She never does that. She knows that that's something worth trusting. And she goes with it. And because of that, in my opinion, she saves the ship, guys. So trust yourself. Trust your intuition. Beverly Crusher did. In Suspicions, this is less good evidence, but I'm going with it. She flies into a sun and survived. And I know what you're going to say. Metaphasic shielding. But what I'm going to say is I think she used her own energy to assist here, because I think metaphasic shielding is super wonky and it hasn't been tested very well. And she manages to do it in the episode Suspicions. And then she manages to do it again in that 2-part episode where they're fighting Data's brother, Laura. I don't remember what the name of that one is, but she's left in charge of the ship and they outrun the Borg and they use the metaphasic shielding again. I just find it suspicious that she was able to do this twice with no incidents. And it's because she's a conduit for energy. She's an amplifier. She's a transmuter. She's a witch. Then we get into Sub Rosa, the controversial episode Sub Rosa, but we're going to be talking specifically about, or I'm going to be mentioning specifically how her relationship with Ronan just serves my purpose, my thesis of saying that she's a witch. So I'm not going to get into anything else. That's for another time. But first of all, Nana was a witch, guys. Look at that house. Like, I'm sorry. If you go into someone's house and there's like dried flowers hanging upside down, there's 100% chance that woman is either studying plant medicine or practicing folk magic. And there's a 90% chance that she's doing both. So, spoiler alert for everyone, that Nana was a witch. Like clearly, like reveled in it even. Side note, I want to live in that house. It's super cozy and it's super witchy and I love it.
Side note, I want Nana was a witch as a t-shirt.
Yes, Nana was a witch. You're not Nana. Nana's dad. I will never not love that quote. I just think it's interesting that we find out about like this whole, Ronan, like anaphasic life form thing. And he says, he tells her that there's something special about the women in her family. And I think actually this right here might be my strongest evidence that she is a witch. So Ronan says, it's the women in your family. You're special, you're compatible for me. And there's something in their DNA, essentially, that makes them compatible, that makes him able to merge with them and then live as sort of like a dual being. And again, trill, anaphasic life forms, it doesn't matter, it wigs me out. But I just find it really interesting that Ronan had the whole galaxy to look for life forms that he could be compatible with. And he ends up finding them or choosing them from human women in 17th century Scotland, who happen to be a matriarchal line. And I just find that fascinating. I think it's suspicious. I think it says that they're witches. And I think it's because it really makes sense because this is a very logical TED Talk, right? From a logical point of view or perspective, that if you are a witch, if you are a conduit for energy, if you are someone who sort of embodies both a culture and a physicality that allows you to act as a channel for others or for their energies, it would make sense that an anaphasic life form would be able to bind to you really, really well, because essentially you're open. You're open to those types of things. So this just makes sense to me. Then another 7th season classic, Attached. Y'all, those implants were not designed to cause telepathy. How many times do I have to say this? They were not supposed to cause telepathy. And the people, the Kes Pritt, are just we don't know how it happened. I'll tell you how it happened, guys. Beverly Crusher is a fucking witch. That's how it happened. And again, she, is an open channel for things. And so it makes complete sense that this thing that was not supposed to cause telepathy, when combined with her, ends up becoming stronger, becoming more than what it was originally meant to do. John Doe anyone, Wesley Crusher anyone, and, ending up sort of causing telepathy. I also think, this is my favorite fan theory that I just keep to myself, but now you all know it, that ultimately she turns Picard down in this episode when she says, maybe we should be afraid. Because I think it's after Sub Rosa and Attached that she really starts to think that there's something kind of off, for lack of a better word, about herself. I think she's starting to figure out that when she comes into contact with people, they often enter other planes of existence. They often evolve. They often move on after coming in contact with her. And I think she's starting to realize this about herself. And it would make sense to me that she would then be scared that if she entered into a relationship with Picard, it would mean she would lose him ultimately. So this makes sense to me. Finally, we have Journey's End, and we've gotten hints all throughout TNG that Wesley is more than what he seems as well. He ends up working. I don't know if working is the right word, but he ends up being a full-time traveler. And you can't be a traveler unless you're literally a higher being. So I don't really know. I've never fully understood what they're trying to say the travelers are. I don't know if they're just like evolved humans, which may or may not mean a whole lot. I mean, Paris and Janeway evolve in the episode Threshold, and they're just salamanders. So I don't know, are they evolved? We don't know. What does that even mean?
You can't compare the concept of the travelers to Threshold.
But I just did. So I think maybe the travelers are less evolved humans or evolved aliens or whatever, and more sort of like demigods maybe, or I don't really know. And again, to me, this, along with Sub Rosa, the whole anaphasic life form bonding, is the best evidence that we have. This may be the single best evidence that we have. And I think we're going to hear from some other people later that also agree with this and have this idea as well. How on earth is Wesley essentially a god unless he came from that? He came from that, at the very least, same untapped potential to evolve into something else. And so again, I don't actually think that Beverly Crusher is a god. I don't actually think that she's a Q. I really just think she's a witch, and she's a conduit for energy, and she's a channel, and she, inspires other people by nature of her being herself to sort of go beyond. Okay, so that is most of my evidence, all of my evidence that Beverly Crusher is a witch. And I wanted to just sort of close with the idea of what is the overall vibe that we're left with, or the impact that, we have from this. And so what we can learn as well. And so Beverly Crusher is often, and this is such a point of frustration in the fandom. And I really am excited about the idea that season 3 of Picard is finally going to sort of change this a little bit. But Beverly Crusher is consistently downplayed and sidelined, not only in this show, but I think also by people that like Star Trek. I think a lot of people actually find her annoying, or they think she's a boring character. But those of us that love her don't think that at all, right? And what I want to say here is, what if she is often downplayed? What if she is often sidelined? But what if that's because her influence is so subtle, right? What if it's because she's using what's around her and what's inside her to influence others in a way that is different from traditional structures of power? She's often the defining factor or the linchpin for change simply by being present and being in her own power. And I'm thinking specifically, I know Green Shirts has been talking about this on Twitter on the episode I, Borg, right? Beverly impacts so much change in that episode just by being herself. And like I just said, by being in her own power. And for me, for my own personal definition, ultimately for me, that is what a witch is. A witch is a woman, or really any person, who knows their worth and power and stands grounded in that. Often, I do think there's also a practice of connecting to the land, the energy, the elements around them, out of a sort of form of reverence or respect that may look really, really different for different people. But I do think that generally goes along with it. We don't really see that with Beverly, but we don't know that she doesn't have that, question mark. So maybe. And I also think that her influence is so subtle, very much like the herbal medicine that she's been taught, that she's aware of. It isn't always an obvious and immediate impact. herbs and plant allies like Beverly Crusher work with a body. They work with individual physiologies and temperaments in order to assist naturally occurring processes that would happen anyway. They're not changing anything away from what it was supposed to be. They're just assisting in things that are supposed to happen, things that are meant to happen anyway. Ultimately, for me, Beverly Crusher as the archetypal witch, and also real witch, guys. She's totally doing magic in her quarters. Like, you can't convince me otherwise. But ultimately, she teaches me that I can be a multifaceted woman who embraces both logic and science, and a woman who is tethered to the ground and decidedly connected with myself, my intuition, my feelings, and maybe even a higher power. And that I don't need to do anything to make a positive impact in the world. I can simply be myself. I can be open to genuine connection with others. I can seek the sacred in the mundane. I can value people over ideas, and I can embody, as best I can, curiosity, thereby creating a ripple effect that I cannot even possibly imagine. So, guys, in closing, be like Beverly. The witch part's optional.
I am very happy that we're friends. You are amazing. This was the best thing that I have ever heard. Like, I'm going to be thinking about this 8,000 years into the future, because I will never die. We know this. And I'm going to be thinking about this far into the future, because this is fucking phenomenal.
Thank you. So we have a submission. We have another submission from our friend on Twitter, Michelle, on the Rocks 81. So I'm going to play that for us now and see what she has to say. And I've not listened to this yet, so I'm really excited to see her thoughts, or to hear her thoughts.
Hey, Sophia and Adrienne. Thanks for asking for a penny for my thoughts, as Beverly might say, though you just might get more than you bargained for. When it comes to the theory that Beverly Crusher is not entirely human, that perhaps she's a higher being, I love this theory. Beverly Crusher is a mystery on Star Trek. We don't know a lot about her origin, and fans can't help but ponder the possibilities. So I'm going to look at, really quickly, 5 TNG episodes that I think support this theory. And standing on their own, I admit they may seem to be a bit of a stretch, but when you put them all together, I think they make a compelling case. So let's put our Dixon Hill hats on and take a look. The first episode I want to reference is Transfigurations from season 3. Beverly saves John Doe, an entity that is evolving into a higher being, and is also, at the same time, drawn to Beverly, and not just because she rescued him. They develop a very sweet relationship, and he appreciates her intellect, her compassion. He sees something in her as he himself is transforming, and she helps him in that evolution. So I just thought that's an interesting episode. It's also probably the healthiest relationship we ever see Beverly in on screen, but ultimately love that he sees something in her as he himself is growing and evolving, and that she helps him in that. So Transfigurations, number 1. Number 2, this is a no-brainer. Remember Me. The episode speaks for itself. Beverly basically thinks her way out of an illusion in this warp bubble that has been gaslighting her. And she also basically summons the Traveler almost telepathically. And she's definitely using instincts and perception that kind of make it seem like maybe there's something more at play there. So definitely check out Remember Me. Number 3 is going to be Cause and Effect. In this episode, the Enterprise is caught in a time loop, and Beverly picks up on this pretty quickly. She gets a vibe. She gets almost like a sixth sense that something is wrong, and she pursues it. She investigates. She talks to Picard. She is, in almost every iteration, trying to figure out what's going on. She seems to sense it on another level. So that's another point in the corner for this theory, I think. Number 4, True Q. This is the episode where Beverly mentors Amanda, who is a Starfleet cadet. She's trying to figure out where she wants to be in Starfleet, and she finds out that she's a Q and has Q powers. Now, even after she finds this out, she turns to Beverly. She seeks her advice. She appreciates Beverly's mentorship right up until the end. Beverly helps her come to accept herself as a Q and encourages her. And I think it kind of shows that Amanda saw something in Beverly in a similar way that John Doe did. I also like the way that Q is very sassy to Beverly, not just in this episode, but almost every time he interacts with her. And I wonder if that's because he knows there's something special about her too. Number 5, somewhat controversial, Sub Rosa. Only because Ronan, this anaphasic life form, can only derive energy and get life for himself through Beverly and through her family line, which tells us that maybe there's something unique about their DNA, about their chemistry, about what they are. And then those are the 5 episodes, but finally, I can't not mention Wesley Crusher. She gave birth to a traveler. So I think that in and of itself is proof that there's probably something unique going on with Beverly Crusher. So those are my theories. That's my case. I hope you guys have some thoughts as well. I'm sure you will. And I look forward to hearing your theories. So until next time, live long and prosper.
Michelle coming in with the facts as always. Michelle, if you guys don't follow Michelle on Twitter, please do. Like, her takes are always incredible, and she has amazing insight into a lot of, I think, like, lesser talked about or lesser talked about Star Trek theories and Star Trek episodes. Like, I just think that she's incredible, and she's a huge Beverly Crusher advocate, and like everything she said made sense. Like, that's some pretty damning evidence there.
Yeah, I gasped when she talked about the True Q episode because I completely forgot about that when I was making my notes. So I'm so glad that Michelle, that you brought that up, because yes. Again, I can't believe I forgot this. I'm so glad you brought it up. This is yet another example of her sort of acting as an intermediary or a midwife in essence to someone else and helping them recognize their own potential just by value of being around her. And I love what you said about Q being sassy to her. You're completely right. And he's not sassy like that to Picard, but he really, really is to Beverly. And so, yeah, maybe you're right. He sees something in her. He sees this one is a little bit different from the rest. And I am not threatened by her per se, but I recognize that she is someone who in her own right has a tremendous amount of power. And I can't think of anyone else that he's this sassy with. Can you?
I don't think so. Like, I'm trying to think of like even him, like he's a little bit sassier with Picard in Picard, but when we first like initially see him in TNG, no, I agree. Like, it's just Beverly.
He is quite sassy with Janeway and Voyager, but he's also trying to get her to convince to agree to having a baby with him. So I don't know. That feels like just a different situation. So yeah. I like that. I also like, by the way, to add on to this, Beverly seems to be really among the TNG crew the main person who's like, I have zero time for your bullshit, Q. Like, she seems to be not threatened by him in any way, shape, or form at all. She's not scared about anything he does. She's just like, get on with it. And so again, does she somehow sense that she has her own source of power? I don't know. But that was amazing, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. And we've also had our friends at Antimatter send us their theory as well. So Liz from Antimatter Pod here has a similar theory. She's entitled this, Beverly Crusher is a space witch descended from a long line of space witches. And she goes on to say that Beverly Howard Crusher is a scientist and a skeptic, but she is also incredibly intuitive, and godlike beings are drawn to her. She knows herbal medicine, which is absolutely a type of science. She also goes on to reference Remember Me and Suspicions as key episodes that kind of hint at Beverly's witchiness, as well as how extremely powerful or godlike beings are drawn to her. So she says John Doe in Transfigurations, Amanda in True Q, and she mentions, like Michelle said, that also Q hates her specifically, which might be because she's competition for Picard, but might also be because she reminds him of his ex, another ginger with a penchant for sarcasm. She also says that her theory is that somewhere way, way back in Beverly's ancestral line was a godlike being, and some vestigial trace of that DNA remains. Nothing that would turn up in a scan, but she's saying, unfortunately, her words, I think what I'm saying is that Wesley is his own great, 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 and then there's about 5 lines of great, great, great grandfather, saying that let's assume that he traveled to a point far enough in the past that it's not genetically problematic, and he fell in love with a nice Scottish woman who did not have red hair, and then they had a child, and presumably at some point he went, shit, I think I've just founded my own family line. Is that bad? Should I talk to someone? I wonder if Counselor Try is taking new patients. And then she says, in conclusion, the whole Crusher Howard family is a paradox. What do you think, Adrienne?
Liz, yes, 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 yes. I love this. And I love to, that you mentioned the stuff with Q and Amanda. But yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. And I like your idea too that they're sort of space witches because somewhere back in their line, there is some sort of like godlike being. And I really like your theory too that, it's not enough to show up on a scan, yet it's enough to really impact her and her impact of and on other people. And then, of course, the Wesley thing. I also loved, is it because she reminds Q of his ex? Another redheaded lady with a lot of feistiness. So I thought that was really, really good. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thanks so much, Liz and Antimatter Pod.
Sophia, I know you have your own theory about what Beverly Crusher is. Would you like to share for the class?
So I don't really like referring to it as a theory, considering that it is in fact. It is proven, and I will give you the undeniable proof shortly. But my fact is that Beverly Crusher died 5 years ago and is a ghost.
I'm so glad we're friends.
So Beverly Crusher died how she lived, super horny, covered in weeds, in Arsenal of Freedom. She, in fact, was not saved by, I forget what the root is called, but Picard chewing it up and putting it on all of her wounds. Surprise, surprise. Just made her die faster. And any episode that we see in which Picard is like faced with like a moral conundrum, it's just him manifesting his own guilt about inadvertently expediting Beverly Crusher's death. So everything else that happens from him season 2 onwards is just him being like a haunted man. And it's convenient that after Arsenal of Freedom, we don't see Beverly Crusher for a year. So, we're told, Wesley is told that his mother has gone to head Starfleet Medical or to work at Starfleet Medical, which is also what, parents say when, your dog isn't dead, your dog's gone to the farm. Obviously, like, death is incredibly traumatic, and you're not going to be like, hey, Wesley Crusher, guess what happened on this away mission? So of course you're going to be like, your mom's just like gone to Starfleet Medical, don't worry about it. And that is, of course, after death, everybody knows the 1-year requisite ghost course that you have to take. And like, it takes a long time. Like, we don't just like instantly get to haunt people, guys. Like, you need a year-long, like, ghost internship. So she was off like learning how to like haunt and be a ghost and shit. And then it's interesting that when she returns back in season 3, Q refers to her return as being back in exile. So, forced to roam the ship as a ghost, methinks. Also, she really likes theater, and she's a ghost, so she's basically a cooler Phantom of the Opera. She's just like the Enterprise theater ghost.
Okay, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Who does she drag down to her lair?
So she switches things up a bit. She definitely drags down Riker. a lot. But she just, she switches it up. She's just like casually obsessed with everybody. She's not like the Phantom where it's like, I'm just gonna like focus on this one 16-year-old and be creepy. She's just like a non-predatory theater ghost that just like, equal opportunity theater ghost.
Good save. Good save.
Yeah. She's also, and in my notes, I just have, she's involved in all the weird shit. Like, she's just, like, any episode that is a Crusher-focused episode falls under the category of weird shit. And, like, who loves weird shit? Ghosts. Ghosts love weird shit. Remember Me. That is literally just her, like, doing ghost shit. Like, nobody else is really even involved in that episode because she's a ghost. She also calls everyone by their first names, which is something a ghost would do.
You're not wrong.
Right? Also, my most damning evidence is that she brushes her hair like a ghost.
Can you please say more about this and also the origin of this statement for the listeners, please? You knew I was going to make you. Sophia's been talking about brushing hair like ghost for years, guys. Please explain.
So, like, if you were to, like, observe people brushing their hair, like, I feel like there's, like, a traditional way to brush your hair, and then there's a way in which suggests that you are haunting people. And I think in the like scale of normal brushing hair to, oh wow, this person's been dead for 5 years, Beverly Crusher falls far to the she's a ghost scale of hairbrushing.
So I just want to bring up a little bit of information here that Sophia is neglecting to mention. The origin of the statement "brushing your hair like a ghost" comes from. Does anyone want to guess? I'll leave a few seconds here for you to think to yourselves. Whose filmography might this come from? What? I'm sorry. Orla Brady. Yes, that is absolutely correct. So there is a short film in which Orla Brady plays a dead person who doesn't know she's dead. And there is a scene where she is brushing her hair like a normal person brushes their hair. But Sophia said, and I quote, "She's brushing her hair like a ghost. I knew she was dead." You're welcome.
And I stand by this as evidence. Like, that to me, if the whole thing, like, if a piece of media, if the whole thing is they were dead all along, and you don't have a scene of them, like, forlorningly brushing their hair, then, like, you really missed an opportunity. Because, like, ghost-like hairbrushing is top-tier ghost content right there.
This makes no sense at all, and I will stand by this. I think I've asked you 75 times, but what does it mean to brush your hair like a ghost? And you always say,
like, it's self-explanatory.
It's
like,
not. It's not.
There's like a normal way. Like, I assume that you're not a ghost. Because, like, it would be weird if both of us were ghosts. So right. I assume that you're not a ghost. And, like, I need you to, like, look in the mirror and brush your hair. And the way that you brush your hair is not ghost-like.
I just feel like, to me, what brushing your hair like a ghost would be is, 1, brushing your hair covered in a sheet. I don't know how it would work, but it would, in fact, be reminiscent of ghost behavior. Number 2, you're brushing your hair while going, ooh. Like, that's brushing your hair like a ghost.
No, and also, no. Brushing your hair while looking like you yourself are haunted and you're ready to haunt someone else is the essence of brushing your hair like a ghost. And also, this, which ties into my final point, is that Beverly Crusher walks like a ghost.
Please explain.
Do I need to? So watch the opening of Remember Me and watch her walking down with Dalen Crace and tell me that's how a human woman walks.
Oh no, it's not how a human woman walks. I just wouldn't have gone ghost. I don't know what I would have said, but I don't think ghost would have been, my first thought.
So ghost is usually my first thought in I'm gonna say 95% of most situations is ghost, but it just so happens that I am 100% right in this specific situation, that Beverly Crusher is in fact a ghost.
I'll allow it. I also just want to say that we should continue to get pats on the back for our ability to bring in or reference Orla Brady's filmography in literally every episode we do.
Tune in for my next theory that Beverly Crusher is in fact an angel that keeps her wings in a box.
No. Oh no. Okay, I have a question, a very serious question. Who in DS9 and then in Voyager is the most likely to be a ghost? If Beverly Crusher is the ghost in TNG, who's the ghost on DS9 and Voyager?
Okay, 100%. I could probably go on for hours that Garrick is actually a ghost, because it makes sense that he like actually died in the occupation and is just like, either he doesn't realize that he's a ghost. Like Beverly knows that she's a ghost. I don't think that Garrick knows that he's a ghost and he's just like chilling in DS9 and he's like trapped there forever. And all the other people are like, no, we know he's a ghost and he's just like chilling, and that makes sense. And then Garrick realizes that he's a ghost and realizes that he can do like mischievous shit. And also I just like the idea of like having a ghost tailor. Voyager. Like Cass is basically a ghost.
No.
Basically anyway. Poor Cass. Who is a ghost on Voyager? I feel like you could make a point for like most people to be a ghost. Well, I feel like there's just Salamander Janeway, the ghost of Salamander Janeway, roams the halls of all seasons after Threshold.
How dare you put that cursed image into people's minds?
Neelix would be a good ghost.
Ooh, yes.
Neelix would be a good ghost.
I kind of think I would say Harry Kim is the ghost.
Explain.
I just think, first of all, I think people like to forget this conveniently. But I think is it season 2? I don't really remember, but when Voyager duplicates itself, like duplicate Harry Kim is who we have for most of the show. The original Harry Kim or the duplicate Harry Kim, we don't really know. One of the Voyagers dies. But one of the Harry Kims dies. And we have like the other one, he goes to the other ship with Naomi Wildman, because Harry Kim and the original Naomi Wildman both die. And so I don't know, there's just something about Harry Kim, like he's like Casper, the friendly ghost man. Captain of my heart. Harry Kim, ghost.
Ooh, that makes sense. So I think like, you know, what we're saying is that everybody, those you least suspect, could be a ghost. Live your life assuming that anybody around you could be a ghost.
Agreed. So I think we have one more submission that we want to take a look at today as we end. But first of all, I did want to ask you, which theory do you think is, so far the most believable? Ghost, witch, or Anabosh?
Well, I told you that the rest of them are theories, but mine is fact. She's a ghost. But if I had to choose a theory, not a fact like mine, I would say that she is a witch.
Thank you. I would also say this. So we have one more submission from our friends at Open Pike. And I'm really excited to see what they have to say. So here we go.
Hey, Adrienne and Sophia, thanks for inviting us on to your Halloween show. This is the Open Pike Night Crew. I'm producer John.
I'm Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable.
And I'm Cameron from Green Shirt.
And we're here tonight to talk about Beverly Crusher, human or not.
Or we could just do this whole thing like it's an emergency broadcast. Like it comes in through the static and we're like, we have to warn you about Beverly Crusher. She's not what she seems.
Whatever you do, do not go to Beverly Crusher's quarters. She will autopsy you regardless of what your problem is.
She's a Dexter.
We invited her on stage. There were no survivors.
I think that's a ginger stereotype that they just kill people. Because that's 2 in a row at least.
All
right?
serial killers.
Speaking of serial killers, okay, so when Wesley might be the strongest piece of evidence that something is up with Beverly, right? Because we know that Wesley is not normal. And why? Why is he not normal? Is it genetic? Is it just a trick of fate? Like, what is it that makes Wesley special? What do you guys think?
I think Beverly Crusher is the mother of every traveler. I think she is too powerful. And I think the Q continuum is constantly erasing her memories. So the pocket universe, that was not Wesley. That was Beverly being wiped and having to come back into the universe to be badass.
It's a strong theory, strong hypothesis there. But I would point you to my wall and the red string attached to the varying pictures I have on it, where you can clearly see that Beverly Crusher is an anagram of cherub revelry. And so that's just 100% concrete evidence right there. Beverly Crusher is an angel that likes to party.
Like a dancing angel,
Wait.
might you say?
On
Like
the
an
head of a
angel
pen?
that likes to club? Like Captain Angel from Star Trek Strange New Worlds?
Oh, shit.
Dancing angel? There it is. The Crusher connection. Hey, this is Jesse. I had to sneak back in and just tell you what I actually think is going on because I couldn't say this in front of camera, and obviously it's a spoiler. We find out in season 2 that Wesley is a traveler and he's putting together basically a team for some kind of time heist. There's no way that you give birth to somebody who just becomes a traveler without being some kind of Q or other being. Now, I think to John's point, they had kept her contained in a Starfleet uniform, and at some point that stopped working because anybody whose instinct to question the veracity of the universe they're in that's that strong has got to be something more than human. I think at the very least we can all agree Beverly is superhuman. Okay, I'm going to put this on at the end and they won't hear this. Okay, see you guys later.
Hey, Adrienne and Sophia, this is Cameron. I had to sneak back in to record the real, truths behind Beverly because I do have it figured out. These other guys weren't listening. Beverly is a Q. And her and, the Q we know, John Q. Delancey, they had a bet, like a Job-like bet, the devil and God, and Picard was the Job, and it was like, who could corrupt Picard the best? Beverly went like, well, I'm just going to pretend to be human and get married to his best friend, and then his best friend's going to die, and then I'm going to be all sexy and really try to fuck with his head, and then Q made him Robin Hood. So who do you think won? Which Q was the Qist?
Hey, Adrienne and Sophia, I edit this podcast, so I heard what Cam and Jesse said. If you two ever want to join Open Pike Night, we can definitely elevate the level of intelligence here. But anyway, thanks for doing the show. Thanks for having us on. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
That was a joy and a delight.
I would die for all 3 of those men.
Oh my goodness.
Gladly.
Yes, I had no idea where that was going, and I could not have imagined, and so I'm so glad I was able to just sit back and enjoy the ride.
As soon as I heard, is an anagram for, and I'm like, yes, this is the shit that I live for.
Yes, I love it. I was dying laughing, and I think my favorite part was that Beverly and Q have a Job-like bet, and Picard is Job, and it's just who can screw him over the most. And Beverly went the route of, I'll just pretend to be human and marry his best friend, which totally fits into why Beverly Crusher talks so weird, because she's pretending to be human, and the only thing she's ever seen are movies from the 40s. So she shows up and she's like, I'm Dr. Beverly Crusher, and I talk like I'm a femme fatale from the 1940s. Also, what is it with female characters in Star Trek talking like they're from the 40s? What?
It's
Why?
because Janeway is also a ghost. Janeway is the ghost of Katharine Hepburn. And she's being possessed by the ghost of Katharine Hepburn. I need everyone to go and watch all 7 seasons of Voyager, just keeping in the back of your mind that you are watching the ghost of Katharine Hepburn pilot a ship. Just keep that in mind during your next rewatch.
It will make viewing better. I can attest to it. Open Pike, thank you so much, John, Jesse, and Cameron, for sending us that very fun and very creative submission. And yeah, that was fantastic.
It really was. Thanks so much, guys.
So just in closing, where can the people find us if they want to send us their own theories? We would really love to hear from you guys what you think. Who's right and why is it me? And who's wrong and why is it Sophia? So please let us know. Or if you have any other crazy off-the-wall theories, send it to us on Twitter, Instagram, email. We'll be happy to retweet, reshare those. Do you think Beverly Crusher is an insect alien that drinks sugar water like from Independence Day? Or, maybe she's just like a poorly sewn together silk scrunchie. I don't know what you think. You have to tell us. So, Sophia, where can the people find us to let us know their theories?
Twitter @Where's Beverly, Instagram @Where's Bev, and as always, send us pictures of your cat, your fanfic recommendations, and your agreement that there is a specific way to brush your hair that alludes to the fact that you are in fact a ghost. Where's Beverly @gmail.com.
Sophia, there is one person in the world that's going to agree with you, and I think that person is Orla Brady, and I don't think she's going to email you. So
it was an intentional choice. She saw that script and she was like, yes, I'm going to brush my hair like a ghost. It was intentional.
So on that note, we look forward to our remaining October Halloween specials. And with that, happy Halloween, y'all.
Happy Halloween. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
You dreamt you were in bed with someone? Frankly, I'm envious. I did fall asleep reading a particularly erotic chapter in my grandmother's journal.